Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters-Law, my co-host, Eddie Richard, and we are back, just a week after some action of our last show. A few things happened, the draft, free agency, hockey hot stove, a little bit of news. So hopefully we'll be back on a regular basis like this as, the NHL season finished. All these things happened, and we're moving into this short off season as we go into next year, but plenty to unpack in this show. We'll start off a little bit with the draft. We'll also have Thomas come back and talk with us about that. We'll go into the free agency, plenty of fan questions as well, and things to cover on this show. So let's get this party started. Eddie, it's only been a short time, but the draft, pretty interesting, exciting, right? A little virtual draft, not the normal. But, the word is the Ducks did pretty well. They had Jamie Drysdale drafted in the first round and Jacob Perreault. What did you think just overall about the draft and how the Ducks did?
I was pretty excited about it. I can't believe Drysdale dropped that low. I know the Red Wings threw out a curveball with their selection, but it was kind of good that we get that. I still think he's a top defenseman in the draft, even though Sanderson went before him. So I'm just looking forward to seeing what he can do in the hopefully the near future. I don't think we'll see him dressed up in a Ducks uniform this season, especially with everything going on. But watching videos from this kid, he looks like the real deal, and I'm looking forward to it. And it's really cool that some scouts compared him to Cale Makar. If he can turn out anything like Cale Makar, I think the Ducks are going to be set on defense for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And they kind of did, what we expected. Like I said, I'll have Thomas in here in a minute, but they did get a forward and a defenseman in the first round. That's what Thomas predicted, but in reverse order. Still exciting, though. I'm with you, like Drysdale, a good solid skater, a playmaker. They're saying that he can also contribute on the power play. You talk about Perreault, they're talking about him having a great shot being a sniper. He had 30-plus goals in the last 2 seasons. Also someone that can score on the power play. So I thought it was kind of interesting looking at this draft. It seemed like the first round, Murray went after guys, quality people like Thomas had talked about, kind of went for the best pick available. But he also looked at addressing the power play, and we'll see that too in some of these other moves that we'll talk about later in the show. Also, he went with 3 defensemen in the first 5 picks in this draft, trying to load up, I think, again, too, because the Ducks seemed to kind of, be a little bit short there as well. So I think it was kind of a combination. I think he went for, the best players early on and then kind of shifted gears. The last 3 picks he went with forward, so he kind of went a little bit more with what kind of the roster looked like, which is what he talked about in the hockey hot stove, which, again, we'll talk about that later. But overall, I think they did really good, Eddie. I was pretty excited. It was different, obviously they weren't there in person, but a lot of people gave the Ducks high marks, A minus, B plus, and we talked about that in the last show. We really felt that the Ducks would, do decent with Madden being, basically the quarterback there, drafting all this stuff and doing all the research with the scouts and everything, and overall, the Ducks came through on the draft.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And Perreault, too, via Elite Prospects, they have him as one of the peer snipers and one of the best shots in the draft class, a player that can score from anywhere. So just having him, especially with the Ducks, don't score a lot of goals, especially on the power play, I think he's going to be a great addition. And I really think the Ducks knocked it out of the park on day 1 of the draft. It was, I guess what's that movie, Draft Day, when that guy comes up and says, "We had a good day."
Yes.
I just kept thinking that in my mind during the draft. So, overall, I'm happy. I'm looking forward to hearing what Thomas has to say about all the other draft picks. He called it right, even though it was reverse order. But if you're a Ducks fan, you cannot be mad at this. And then Perreault also too, number 44. So I've been looking and hoping for a superstar or former superstar, or at least a top player that can come on the Ducks and wear number 44, because that's my hockey number. I would love to get and like a player that has that number, so I can buy that jersey just for the number. So fingers crossed for those little tiny things like that make me happy.
Hey, little tiny things are important. And with that, I'll bring in Thomas now. He and I'll talk a little bit about the articles he wrote and what he thought about the draft. And then after that, Eddie and I will go into the free agency. So here's my interview with Thomas. And joining me now is Thomas Harrington. We had him on the show last week. He gave his preview on how he thought the Ducks would do in the draft. And Anaheim did end up taking a defenseman and a forward in the first round. So we're going to kind of dive into that. And we'll talk about the other picks as well and kind of the status of maybe junior hockey as well. But Thomas, what did you think about the Ducks? It seemed like a pretty exciting draft. A lot of people thought they did pretty well. They took Jamie Drysdale and Jacob Perreault in the first round. What are your thoughts maybe on the draft overall for the Ducks or the first round? How did you think they did?
I think the Ducks did well. I like this draft a lot. I'm hoping in a few years I can look back and love this draft, but that remains to be seen. So, like we discussed, the Ducks had the 6th overall pick. I thought it was going to be one of 3 players, Lucas Raymond, Jamie Drysdale, Marco Rossi. Raymond went 4th overall to Detroit. And that 5th, Ottawa was the first surprise, taking Jake Sanderson. And so the Ducks stepped up, and they took Jamie Drysdale. Based on everything I've read, I think he's a very, very good pick. If it was up to me, I probably would have picked Rossi, but Murray and Madden, they know so much more about. They've forgotten more about hockey than I'm ever going to know. So I'm going to trust them on this pick. And Drysdale, he really fills a need in this organization. An elite right-handed defenseman. He projects to be better than Vatanen, better than Montour, more on their best days. And they were 2 pretty good right-handed defensemen in the past. So if he can really hit that ceiling of his, I think he is potentially a great pick at 6th overall.
Yeah, I agree. What's kind of interesting, too, is that we talked about, the Ducks going by best player in the beginning. They pick up Drysdale, as you said, a good playmaker, a guy that can add on the power play. Then they get Perreault, the son of Yannick Perreault, who's also got a great shot, who can also add to the power play. Did you kind of think that the Ducks were maybe trying to, Murray and Madden, address the power play a little bit in this first round?
I think they were addressing the power play in the first few rounds of the draft. Drysdale, he's a power play specialist. He had 22 power play points last season and was tied for the team lead on Erie with 19 power play assists. So absolutely, that's one of the reasons why they want to pick up is because the Ducks power play has been anemic for 2 or 3 seasons now. Yeah, exactly. When he gets there, he's just going to be great. And then Pro as well. He led Sarnia with 29 power play points. More importantly, though, 15 of those were power play goals, which is just, the Ducks haven't had that kind of power play finisher since Perry in his heyday. And Perreault he's a right-handed shot. He's got a great one-timer. He's actually a player I thought was going to go in the late teens, early 20s. But if he fell to 27, I really wanted the Ducks to take him. So I was very happy to see him still available. And I was happy to see the Ducks pick him up as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was really ecstatic after the first 2 picks. I thought the Ducks did fantastic in round 1. Going into the other rounds, the Ducks kind of went more heavy on defense in their first 5 picks. 3 of them were defensemen, and then at the end they finished out with 3 forwards. Whoever you want to talk about or whatever you think, in these rounds, anybody stand out to you? Do you think, we talked about the Ducks kind of going with talent first and then maybe more position later on. Just what's your thoughts on the rest of the picks, however you want to break it down?
So I'll just go in order there. 2nd round pick, Sam Colangelo. He played for the Chicago Steel at the USHL last year. He's actually a lot like Perreault. He's a winger right, and he's just a goal scorer. He had 28 goals in 44 games. And his selection, both him and Perreault, gives the Ducks 2 right wingers for their future. And they haven't had this kind of talent at right wing in their prospect system in a very long time, frankly. Over the last several years, it's been centers and left wings that they've really focused on. So it's nice to see them get 2 right wingers who have potentially very good 2 elite goal scorers. So I actually like Colangelo a lot. And if Perreault had been picked, Colangelo is actually one of the players who I was initially considering for the Ducks at 27th overall. So I was very happy to see him taken with the 36th pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think they did pretty well on that. And, then they kind of shifted gears after that with the 67th and 104 pick. They went with defensemen. Again, you think they're trying. I mean, they did pick up Shattenkirk obviously right after this, but it seems like they're trying to load up a little bit on defense in these couple picks.
Oh, absolutely. So for Ian Moore and for Timo Nickel as well, they're both right-handed shots. They're both known for pushing the play and for scoring a lot of points. So Ian Moore was in high school last year, and 28 games he had 46 points. This coming season he will be in the USHL playing for the Chicago Steel, the team Colangelo was just on, and then the year after that he's committed to go to Harvard. So he's a right-hand shooting defenseman. A lot of what I read about him actually reminds me of Drysdale, just not at the elite level that Drysdale is. And he's also nowhere near as far along his development as Drysdale is. But if he can work out, the Ducks might have two great right-hand shooting defensemen in their system in the next few years. And then Nickel as well. He's another right-handed shot. In Drummondville, he had 39 points in 58 games. And again, he led his team in power play assists with 19 and had 25 power play points overall. So I really think these first 5 picks for the Ducks are all about fixing the power play long term. They've all got a ton of skill, and they're all known for doing a lot of damage with the man advantage. Not just Drysdale, not just Pro, but Nickel as well. So I'm excited to see how they work out over the next several seasons.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right as far as addressing the needs for the team. What did you think about the last 3 picks? They went with Gleemuff, Sundsvik, and Bowen, all forwards, and the last, like I said, 3 picks. You think they're just kind of stockpiling for the AHL there, or something else?
So I think Gleemuff is a bit of a weird one. He's already 21 years old, so he's one of the oldest players picked on the draft. He's currently playing in the KHL, and he actually won Rookie of the Year honors in the KHL last year with 23 points in 55 games. Now, that's not a huge point production that he had, but still, it's good enough to get Rookie of the Year in one of the best leagues in the world. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in the next couple of years. He also he's Russian. The last time the Ducks picked a Russian was Igor Bobkov over a decade ago. They don't take a lot of Russians. So I a lot in this guy, and as a 5th-round pick, I think it was absolutely the right player to choose. Is he going to be a great player in the AHL? Maybe, maybe not. But I think more than most 5th-round picks, because of that age he already has and the experience he has in the KHL, I think he has a better chance than most other 5th-round picks do. So I'm really excited to see what he does. The KHL's actually already started their season. He's played 16 games, and he's got 3 goals and 9 points to start the season off. So, again, those aren't elite eye-popping numbers, but those are pretty solid numbers for a 5th-round pick in one of the best hockey leagues in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, looking at a lot of these picks, I think the Ducks did very well overall. What did you think in terms, like, if you were to give them a grade? A lot of people gave the Ducks an A minus, B plus. How do you think the Ducks did just overall in this draft for 2020?
So, like you said, most people gave them an A or a B. Right now, I would probably do B plus. The only reason why I don't give him an A is just because, while I think Drysdale is potentially a great player, I do think there was at least one, maybe even 2 other players I would have taken before him. But, if looking back 5 years from now, Drysdale is easily Anaheim's best defenseman and just one of the best players in this draft, then I will hopefully be changing my tune and saying, they definitely got an A on this draft. So right now, I'd probably go B plus. And, as with all drafts, there's the potential for that to rise or lower. I'm hoping it will rise significantly would be great.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's difficult to determine. The consensus is the Ducks did pretty well, pretty high up there. We had a lot of people asking about next season and if Jamie Drysdale would crack the lineup. Once the Ducks got Shattenkirk, Eddie and I talked about it a little bit on the show as well, that, it seems a little bit difficult, but there's also some rules that you and I kind of talked about before you came on here. I didn't know if you want to maybe discuss them a little bit, that with Drysdale, it's going to be difficult because with the logjam, the Ducks have top 4, right? Lindholm, Manson, Fowler, Shattenkirk, and then they've got a whole, bunch of people fighting it out for that 3rd pairing. So if Drysdale doesn't get NHL time, which is kind of what Eddie and I think, then I'll kind of let you explain it. But it's going to be kind of a tough go, even though there's also some uncertainty too in the league, which he and I will discuss a little bit more in the show as well. But kind of what's your take on, I guess, the status of the minor league hockey and how it's all going to work out? There's like just so much uncertainty going into next season.
Yeah, uncertainty it's the right word for it. If this was a normal year, I would say Drysdale would be back in juniors and then have a shot a year from now at the NHL lineup. It's not a normal year, so it's really hard to guess what's going to happen. So the way Canadian Juniors works is you can either be, when you're drafted at 18 or 19, you're either in Canadian Juniors or you're in the NHL. There's actually a rule that says you can't go to the AHL unless you are 20 or more if you played in Canadian Juniors. Now, there are some exceptions to that. Max Comtois a couple of years ago, when he was 18 or 19, did get a few games with the goals. That was because that was a conditioning assignment after being injured. Once that conditioning assignment was up, he either had to come back to the AHL or be returned to juniors, and ultimately the Ducks sent him back to juniors to further develop. So if this was normal times in my mind, I think Drysdale stays in juniors this season, and then as a 19-year-old, I think he'd have a shot at the AHL, but that's pretty far from a guarantee. However, right now, Canadian Juniors is kind of all over the place. QMJHL is already playing, and they've played a number of games, but every now and then games also are being postponed because of the ongoing pandemic. So it remains to be seen how successful they do this season, unfortunately. The OHL has yet to even announce a date of return to play. I actually saw recently there was talk of the OHL playing, but only as with no hitting allowed in order to try and stop the spread of the virus, which I get why they want to do that. I actually applaud them for trying to do things to help protect these players. Unfortunately, I don't think eliminating hitting is the way to do it, because a hit is, it's a half second and you're gone. Something like a face-off or a scrum is, in my mind, a lot more dangerous because you're face-to-face for a longer period of time. So who knows what's happening with the OHL. And unfortunately, Drysdale plays in the OHL. Erie is in the OHL, so if they don't play this season, maybe they will actually amend the rules and let Drysdale and others play in the AHL this season. I have no idea if that's going to happen, but I just feel like that just makes a lot of sense. If you can't get juniors playing, then let these kids play in the minor league so at least they can continue to develop. That is, of course, if the AHL could even get off the ground. And then the WHL actually just announced their return to play. They'll be back in January, on January 8th. So if they can stick that, that's when Braden Tracy, one of last year's first rounders, will start his season off. So it's very much up in the air. QMJHL is going right now. It's going surprisingly well. Like I said, the having games have been postponed. The WHL is set to return in January, hopefully. As of right now, it doesn't have a return to play date that I know of.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up some good points as far as the minor league hockey goes. With these teams, the certain rules and whatnot, obviously with the CHL, OHL, and different things that are going on. So it'll be interesting to monitor, what's coming up, because, the NHL is supposed to start towards January. The WHL is supposed to start towards January as well. Maybe they do a minute or whatnot. So definitely interesting times and things to keep, abreast of and look at. But I appreciate you coming on again. If you guys don't know, Thomas does a tremendous amount of work for us. He covers anything minor league hockey, Ducks prospects, San Diego Gulls, everything like that. Super appreciative of everything. Thanks for coming on the show again, Thomas.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and that was Thomas. He recapped the draft. Pretty exciting. Look for his articles and everything that he does for this website as he covers the prospects and whatnot with the year going forward. And with this, we expected the draft, as I said, Eddie. We talked about Murray and Madden and the Ducks doing well with that, and then the free agency. You really went off on Murray last time, which I cracked up about the free agency because he doesn't make big moves. So after the draft, we were like, okay, cool, we got these guys. They added a lot of depth, they got a lot of quality players. We're all excited. And then on the last show, if you didn't listen to it, Eddie was very critical of Murray. I was too, but Eddie more so. And I guess maybe Murray listened to the show, Eddie, because he decided to do a bunch of stuff. We talked about, hey, make a big move. Is he going to make a big move? We didn't think he was really going to do much. He goes out, he gets Grant back, which we pretty much expected that. But before it, He trades Goodbranson, creates cap space, brings in Shattenkirk, who he tried to get before, as you all know. And it's kind of interesting, Eddie. I mean, he did do some wheeling and dealing, so maybe you need to just get on him on every show. I don't know.
I know it's going to be hard to say anything negative about Murray on this show because he had a great draft day, and I think free agency he knocked out of the park too. You can't really complain about that. Goodbranson was hard to see go. He played well with the Ducks. So I wish him the best of luck. It was one of those moves. It's unfortunate. The cap's not going up. It's staying where it's at. So it's one of those moves you have to make. Kessler is going to be on long-term injury reserve, but we can't use that cap space until later on, until the official rosters get sent out. So it was one of those moves that you had to be made. But you can't really complain. I don't know if you want me to go over who we signed first, or if you wanted to talk about that first, Mike, and now I can interject after.
No, definitely. I mean, we already mentioned Grant and Shattenkirk. If you want to break down the numbers and then some of the other free agents or signings that they did, go for it, and then I'll interject away.
Well, Derek Grant, it took a while, and we were getting all frustrated. I was up at 6 a.m, Southern California
Me
time.
too.
Just sitting there watching, waiting, listening, getting set up. The only regret I had that morning was I should have got beer in the morning, but it was way too early, so I didn't want to go.
Hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, Eddie. Come on.
I know, right? I think it's like in Asia or something. It's 12 hours ahead, so I can go on their time. But Grant, when they announced him, I think every Ducks fan was excited. Grant is welcomed in Anaheim. That's his home. He seems to play his best hockey with the Ducks, and that's what we want from our players, is to milk the most hockey we can out of them, and he loves to play there. He signed a 3-year deal worth $4.5 million. That's a $1.5 million AAV. And I know some fans were complaining about that. It's like, I don't understand how you can be complaining about that term. It's a $1.5 million AAV. He was almost a 20-goal scorer. He had 14 goals with the Ducks. He got traded to Philadelphia for that 4th-round pick. He does play 7 games at Philadelphia, has a goal and 4 assists, 5 points in those 7 games, so a 15-goal score before the season got shut down. For a potential 20-goal scorer, yeah, even though it might be a fluke, it might not be, he still plays his best hockey in Anaheim, and I think that's a hell of a deal, and I think he got paid for what he's worth. I'm pretty sure on the open market, he probably could have got a flat $2 million, and that would have been fair for someone like that. Like I said, he loves playing for Anaheim. He loves playing for the Ducks. He posted a cute picture of him rocking that Mighty Ducks shirt as a child when he was a kid. So it's really great to have Grant back, and that just kickstarted it. And right before you can actually start breathing and start talking again, they go and announce they sign Kevin Shattenkirk to a 3-year, $11.7 million deal with a $3.9 million AAV average. And that includes a modified 12-team no-trade to clause. There's a McDonald's ice cream machine, one on IG, was asking about our opinions on Shattenkirk too and who we'll play with. That's an awesome freaking IG name. You should put like broken ice cream machine because that's McDonald's trademark. I really think this is another good signing at a team-friendly deal for the Ducks. He deserved this pay increase. He had that meniscus tear with New York. He didn't have that great of a season. They ended up buying him out. But he was resilient, and he did a kind of a sign for a lower deal to a prove-it deal with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he came in there and did that. He played exceptionally well for Tampa Bay, and he helped them win a Stanley Cup. He brings that Stanley Cup experience. He brings over 679 games, and he's almost a 400-point scorer, too. He's probably going to reach that. He's 17 points away from 17 points, or 400 points. He loves to shoot the puck. He's that ultimate player that knows how to overcome adversity and kind of rise to that occasion. And he did that. He proved it in Tampa Bay, and he's rewarded with the great contract. As far as who he will play with, it's kind of penciled in. He's going to play with Cam Fowler, which is kind of be good. If you guys heard the clip that we posted, him and Cam Fowler are pretty good friends. Cam Fowler, and I think Nick Bonino was that middle that middle anchor that brought them together. So I think that was a contributing factor in how he signed with the Ducks. regardless, he has that instant chemistry ready because they're off ice friendship. So it's just gonna blossom more while playing together. I playing with my best friend. I actually played with my best friend last week. He hasn't played in years. And it's instantly I had that chemistry with him. I knew he was going to be, even though he hadn't played in like 5-6 years, I knew exactly how he plays and just how his personality is on the rink. So I think it's gonna translate to really, really good chemistry, and they're gonna be fun to watch. And hopefully he helps out with the power play, which is definitely needed.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on everything. As far as Grant goes, when that first happened, it was kind of like, okay, it's going to happen. Yeah, I was a little surprised that it was 3 years, but don't forget the expansion draft's coming up too, and all those rules and whatnot. Plus, why wouldn't you lock down Grant for a couple years? We talked about this last season. He plays that bottom six role. He can play wherever you need him to be, forward, wing, center, whatever you got, any forward position basically, to do what you need. And then we were complaining about the power play last year, and we said, hey, put Derek Grant on the power play. Get him in front of the net, do some screening because no one else was doing it. And then what did the Ducks do? I don't know if Murray listened to us again on the podcast, but then they put Derek Grant on the power play. And what happened? He started screening the goalie, and the power play started, it wasn't awesome, but the power play did better. So I think, again, like in the draft, especially in the first round, Murray got 2 guys looking towards the power play. Well, both these guys are the same thing. He brings in Grant, another utility player that can play quality minutes on the bottom 2 lines, but then he can also help on the power play. Brings in Shattenkirk, and you found that awesome clip. I didn't even know he was friends with Fowler until you sent me that. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Also because Murray had talked to him before and tried to do some kind of a move about a year ago or so. So you have that as well. So, you look at the Ducks now, defense, they're looking pretty good. You have your top, pairings, and to kind of go to that IG question, I mean, it looks like Fowler and Shattenkirk will probably be together, and then Lindholm and Manson that they've been with before, but they could probably flip them around a little bit too. And now the Ducks have a top 4 defensive core that's solid, and you've got 3 out of 4 that are puck-moving defensemen. They're great two-way players. Hopefully take some pressure off Gibson, right? Who's just getting pelted last year. So, I really love these moves. And the fact that he moved out Gudbranson, I'm with you, Eddie. Emotionally, I kind of felt for him because I like Gudbranson. I thought he was a great player. Granted, he was more of a, maybe a 4th or 5th defenseman. Wasn't, necessarily like a top pairing. Now we bring in Shattenkirk for a reasonable deal. And the Ducks are up against the cap, as you kind of mentioned too. So I was really happy with these moves, Eddie. And then they made a couple more minor moves. They brought back Andy Welinski on a reasonable deal. You remember he was with the Goals for a while, did play a little bit with the Ducks. Not a bad choice. They brought in the former New York Ranger, Vinny Lettieri, who's done very, very well in the AHL. 71 goals in the last 3 seasons. Played a little bit with New York. It didn't really score as much. And then they also brought in Drysdale's teammate, Maxim Golan, who this guy's been going nuts. He had 25 goals last year with the Erie Otters. Another guy that could explode as well. So, even looking at what they did, and of course, more things can happen. This is just at the time that we're recording this. But I liked what Murray did in the free agency, Eddie. I thought he brought in some of the needs that would help this team. I thought he backfilled some of the stuff, and there's some potential in here for some of these guys to do well. I still think the loophole for the Ducks is the offense. I think that's the big issue. But given the cap space and everything, I like what Murray did in the free agency, Eddie.
Oh, same here. I couldn't agree more with you what you said. Murray did great. Like I said, the draft and the free agency. Lettieri was on a 1-year 2-way deal. He comes from a bloodline of former pros. His grandfather was a coach, GM of the Minnesota North Stars, and a player. His father played pro soccer. His uncle was drafted by the Blackhawks, played some pro hockey too. 2 cousins drafted by the Rangers and the Minnesota Wild. He had Michael Russo reported from The Athletic that he had a dozen other options, and more lucrative options, that he could have signed with. And Colorado, Montreal, and Washington were amongst those. He chose to sign with the Ducks. For some reason, he wants to play for the Ducks. He wants to play in Anaheim or San Diego, who knows. Look for him to have a strong training camp, and I don't think his goal is to sit there and play for San Diego. I think he really wants to make an impact and be on the Ducks. So look for him to have a strong camp and to make the team. All the other signings, they're great. Walensky, I think it's a little bit of logjam for the Ducks, but he's going to play great in San Diego. I mean, who wouldn't want to play and live in San Diego as a pro hockey player? It's going to be awesome. DeLeo, a great guy. We've talked to him to our DMs. We almost had him on the show. Unfortunately, we couldn't get him. But he's a really good guy. He's a hard worker. He puts in the work. And same with Tim. He posted, he'll be here. He's home. He loves playing in Anaheim. And just look for these guys to just bolster up the goals and to play even that much better.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Eddie.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, I was done.
Okay. No, we had the one other one too, Andrew Podolowski as well. So just to make sure you guys knew that was the other guy we brought in as well, Eddie.
Yeah, he came from the Hurricanes. I think we got him on a trade for the Hurricanes. He had some really strong numbers for the goals. Just look for him, too, to assume I think a more of a leadership role for him to come up there and put up those numbers and help the goals, win their championship. So I think for the draft and free agency, I think it's 100% A+. I was critical on Murray last show, and I'm always going to be open and honest with you. I'm not, all because I love the Ducks, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you how I feel, 100% truth. This show, I'll give Murray praise. I'll give praise where it's due. He did a great job. These signings, the scouts too, let's not forget about them. I'm pretty sure they have a lot of pro and amateur scouts and prospect scouts going out and scouting these players and picking the best ones for the Ducks, and I think they hit it out of the park. It was just a great free agency and a great draft for the Ducks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all on the positive swing. More so with all the things that happened this last week for the Ducks. I think you got to look at this team, and there's a lot of potential there. And there's some more stuff we'll talk about too, because they did do another hockey hot stove with Murray. A virtual one. We'll get to that in a second. But before we go to that, let's talk about the Ducks players that aren't coming back. So it's kind of a big list here. I'll just kind of mention them off, and then, Eddie, you can kind of give your 2 cents and I'll give mine. But the guys that did not return was Kevin Boyle, Kiefer Sherwood, Kyle Crisculo, Matt Irwin, Max Gortz. Ryan Miller's still up in the air. We're going to talk about that too because there was some news on him. Chris Mueller, Blake Patelia, Chris Weidman, and Delzato. So those are the guys, at least as the time of this show, that did not come back with the Ducks, and a bunch of them, I'll let Eddie talk about them, some went to other teams. I know Sherwood went to the Avalanche, so Eddie's happy about that. But I'll let you talk about kind of where these guys landed and what kind of surprised you, because I know we were kind of disappointed that Sherwood was gone. Also, Delzato's still out there as well. So what did you think about the Ducks not bringing this group or anybody in particular back?
Well, just speaking on pure emotion, I was really sad to see Kevin Boyle go. He was probably one of my favorites. A great guy on Twitter and social media, talking back and forth. He responded to fans, and he was just fun. He was just a fun player and a really likable player. But all emotions aside, it's a business game, and I guess it had to be done. I wish them the best with the Red Wings. They're in a situation where they just lost Jimmy Howard, so he probably has a chance to make their roster and kind of play in the big league, the National Hockey League. So that's going to be good for him. Sherwood was a really big surprise. He came out of nowhere. No one really knew his name. He had a decent camp with the Ducks to make the roster. I was surprised they let him go and they didn't re-sign him. It just wasn't a mutual thing. I think the Avalanche, they dealt with a lot of injuries too, just like the Ducks. And they have their training facility way closer than San Diego is to Anaheim. So I think he'll have some games with the Avalanche and have an opportunity to crack their roster and to be, I guess, a semi person in the NHL. But another one I was really surprised, actually two other ones. Chris Weidman didn't play that well, but he's currently with the KHL. He has 10 points in 13 games, so he's having some success in the K. Delzato is one of those players where you want that depth. Like he's that seventh guy, maybe that's that bottom six, but he could still play. He could still contribute. He has that experience that that teams want, and he's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. He's just there to play his hockey. I think he's probably one of the, if not the fittest player on the Ducks. This dude's always posting his regimen of workouts, and he just seems like that type of guy that just he works out a lot. So he has that strength, and he's that player that players would see and try to emulate. Like, oh, this guy's at the gym again. He's probably the first one there, last one to leave kind of guy. I don't think he'll be unsigned for too long. Unfortunately for the Ducks, we have way more I guess a little bit better players that can actually take that seventh role. That could be an upgrade, and the Ducks want to go in a different direction. But I do wish him the best, and I wish all of them the best. Like, everyone that played for the Ducks, regardless if they were that household name or not, they still played for the Ducks. They gave us the best they can, and that's all we can hope for. So I wish all these players the best. Miller is really surprising, but like you said, we'll talk about him a little bit later. But I'm really surprised that Miller is not signed to the Ducks yet.
Yeah, definitely. Talking about the defense, like you said with Del Zotto, I mean, you look at the Ducks, right? We talked about their top four: Fowler, Lindholm, Manson, Shattenkirk, pretty locked down. Then you look, there's really a logjam for those 5, 6, 7 spots, right? You have Larson, who we talked about, didn't necessarily have a great year last year. He's still in the mix. You have Cody Curran that they brought in, right? The 30-year-old defenseman that really wants to prove himself. You have to see where he's at. You have Juice, who's a guy that you and I really like, not just because of his name, but we like him as well. And they have a couple other guys in there. Don't forget we had Gooley last year, which some people liked and some people didn't. He was kind of inconsistent, but he's in there. You have Walensky they brought back, Hakapa, Mahura. So there's a ton of people to compete for those bottom spots. So that's why I see Del Zotto didn't come back. And I agree with you, though. I wish he would have. And then it's kind of the same thing with Sherwood. There's a lot of forwards that are kind of fighting out for spots. But I thought maybe Sherwood would have come back, but unfortunately he did not. So these are the guys that are out there, as we mentioned. About a third or half have signed with other teams. Some are playing in Europe and whatnot. So obviously these guys are gone. The Ducks aren't going to bring anybody back. So once the dust settled from the draft and pretty much the free agency, I mean, obviously there's still some more moves that could be made here or there or whatnot. But the first several days, or I call the first 48 hours, where most of the moves are basically determined and made. Bob Murray then had his Hockey Hot Stove with Brian Hayward, and I've gone to all of them. Usually they're in person. This year it was virtually. And he talked about some of this stuff on there. I'm not going to go over all of it, or this show would probably be 2 hours long. But if you didn't read the article, go on there on DucksNPucks.com. I lay out all of it on there. They even also had the Ducks 2 first-round draft picks, Drysdale and Perreault, on there too. So there's some comments from them as well. If you missed it, please go on there and check it out. But I thought the interesting thing, the comment that came out that was maybe the most controversial or got the most news, was also reposted by a couple other places as well, was he talked about Shattenkirk, and Murray said that Shattenkirk learned how to win in Tampa Bay, and he wants to win again. And so that drew a lot of comments from a lot of people, because they're talking about the Ducks, and they're like, well, wait a sec. So Shattenkirk came to Anaheim because he wants to win now, but we've kind of been under this impression that the Ducks have been a rebuild or a retool. So how are they a win now and not a win later team? Kind of an interesting thing. It makes a little bit more sense when Eddie posted that article with Shattenkirk talking about Fowler and their friendship. So that kind of added in there. But it is kind of something to look at and go, okay, win now. I mean, I don't know. With this team, it's interesting. Like I said, I like the defensive structure of this team. I think you got a top 4 locked down. You got plenty of guys to compete for the bottom third pairing. We have Gibson and net. That's not going to change. Still got to figure out the backup goalie, which I'll get to in a second. But it's just interesting to see how this team is. My biggest concern, Eddie, is the offense and, of course, the power play. Obviously, Murray tried to address the power play in the draft and the free agency. It just seems like he's gotten a lot of these younger players that have done well in the AHL, and I don't know how they're going to do in the NHL. Like we talked about, Lettieri did well, right? He brings in Drysdale's teammate Goulon, who's done well there. Also, we know during the summer he brought in Bryce Kendop, who did well also in the AHL. And you got these guys that have scored well in minor leagues, but I don't know how they're going to do in the NHL level. And then Murray also talked about the other guys, and he didn't want to mention names, but he said some of the younger players need to go off this upcoming season. He's hoping, that'll happen. And if you look at the players that are out there, I mean, it's got to be one or two of, Sam Steele, Max Jones, Troy Terry, even Sonny Milano they brought in, who we liked as well. So, I mean, he's got to be talking about those guys and hoping that they're going to come out there and produce. Even you have Lundstrom as well. So, I mean, there's these guys that they're, in the system here. Also, one of our favorites, Comtois as well, who did, obviously pretty well when he came up, right, until he got hurt. So there's a lot of guys that can, I don't know. It's a weird situation where the Ducks are at right now. I think they can definitely do better next season. But if your definition of win now is win a Stanley Cup, there's no way. This team is not a Stanley Cup team. If your definition of win now is to be a team that can compete every night and possibly make the playoffs, then okay, I can see that. So I really think it depends on what your definition is of win now, Eddie.
Oh, yeah, and I really think he's talking about Jones, Terry, Steele, Milano, all those four guys. They have so much potential, and they need to play to it. Terry, Jones, Steele, Milano, like all those players, they should be top six, and hopefully one of them a top forward in the NHL. We're just seeing them slowly inching their way there, but it has to be a significant change if the Ducks want to make any damage. And then let's say all these four players and Silverberg and Henrique regain their form and do as good as they did last season. You have to really think and watch the playoffs and look. You have a team like Dallas that made it to the Stanley Cup final. They beat a team like the Avalanche, which was a powerhouse team. They had they have three superstars in their team, including a defenseman, a superstar. It's an unreal team. The only issue they had was their goalies got hurt. But Dallas beat the living shit out of the Avalanche, just hit after hit. I think one game they hit them it was almost 70 to 25 in the hits. They just beat down their opponents. They had that playoff team that you wanted. And I was so surprised that Dallas didn't win the cup. They were depleted. Just the way they played, they just couldn't sustain that through the 4 rounds. And Tampa Bay exposed it. Tampa Bay had a lot more firepower, and then Tampa Bay responded with that same physicality to them. And once you do that to them, they're pretty much done. The Ducks don't really have that. You have, I think, Delorier is probably the only guy that can actually throw it out physically and dish it out like that. But you can't respond to one player like that. You had, Jamie Benn, Taylor Seguin, those top players dishing out those hard physical play too. It's just I can't see the Ducks. I can't see the Ducks going for that Stanley Cup. It's the win now thing. I get it. I know what you're trying to do. You're just trying to pump everybody up. You don't want to bring everyone down. Let's be realistic. Let's have a realistic goal for the Ducks next season. Yeah, I don't want the Ducks to go in the first round and get bounced out. I don't want them to get in the second round and get bounced out. What does that do for the Ducks long term? Nothing. It just gets them a kind of a mid-tier draft pick. No, let's just play our game one game at a time. Let's improve. We have special teams problems. We have players that aren't reaching their full potential. Let's work on those little things. Let's build that foundation, and then let's start building our team that way. And once we figure out that foundation, figure out that identity, get our players to play to their full potential and know what we have with them, then let's start saying, hey, let's get win now mentality. Let's get that cup mentality. Let's bring back that team that can win the freaking Stanley Cup. Teams like St. Louis, teams like Dallas. Obviously, we're not going to have a team like Tampa Bay. They were just completely stacked. I mean, knock on wood, I really hope we do, but we need that grittiness of St. Louis and kind of Dallas style to win the Stanley Cup in the near future. But let's just have that identity. I'm tired of, like I said before, I'll talk bad about Murray again. You say whatever we want to hear, and yes, you're a great talker, and yeah, it sounds good when you say it. I was running for 7th or 8th grade class president. I'm gonna eliminate recess, or I'm gonna eliminate classes, recess for all, no more algebra, whatever. Everyone's getting hyped up. Yeah, Ferraris for everybody. No, let's be freaking realistic. Right now, the Ducks are kind of in limbo. I mean, we're not as bad as the Sharks have a way better team on paper. They just been crapping the bed all the time. But let's just figure out the little things first. Let's fix the little small problems. You can't just try to just go from A to Z. Let's go A, B, C, D, E. Let's start from the beginning and build that foundation, and then figure out what we have, and then start going. Yes, like I said, once again, I repeat, we're not going to be like Tampa Bay, the stacked house they have. We're not going to be like Vegas. We'll talk about them later, the stacked team they have. We're going to be one of those teams like the St. Louis Blues and Dallas Stars that are going to inch their way and crawl and earn every second of the game they get to actually advance to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you 100% more. I mean, the way that next season's going to go, that's what it's looking at. I mean, unless there's other changes made and other things. And we have some fan questions you guys throw out to us. And there's some stuff that Eddie and I will throw out that the team could do to get even a little bit better. So we'll talk about that in a second. But I threw it out to you guys on social media. And this poll cracked me up because usually the polls are, pretty much... I don't know. There's usually one way that most of you, the listener, and Ducks fans go towards, and this one was pretty crazy. So I threw out, as the team stands now, how do you think they'll do next season? And I put make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, and then I threw in my famous Waterboy quote, "Oh no, we suck again," right? And so it was 35% said we'd make the playoffs, 37 said we wouldn't, and then 28 said we would, suck again. So I thought that was interesting. It was almost, a third across the board on there. And I'm with Eddie. I mean, to me, I think the Ducks could make the playoffs. I really do. I think they have a strong defense core. I think Gibson's fine in net. They stay healthy. They're good. They do have things to work on, like Eddie talked about. They have to work on the power play. They have to work on scoring. They were just terrible last year, and they weren't much better the year before. So if they can get those things going, I think they can. So I'm in the group that says I think they can make the playoffs. Now, what do I feel? I don't want them to make the playoffs, like Eddie said, and they just get knocked out right away. If they're going to play and it's just going to be a whatever season next year, then be a whatever season. Get these young guys in there, get them experience, figure it out. Even Murray talked about Zegras playing some games next season. I know a lot of people are hyped on him. Hell, throw him out there. Get these guys out there, get some experience. Let's do this. But I think that's really what the season's going to be next year. So in terms of win now, making the playoffs, okay, I can maybe see it. But as far as being a contending team and competing, I think it's going to be very, very difficult come next year. Unless, like I said, Eddie and I will have some recommendations. We'll talk about some fan questions in a little bit. But I'm with you, Eddie. I think this team is a team that either barely makes the playoffs or barely misses the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm not over here saying like, hey, I want the Ducks to drop every game, to lose, not skate. No, I want improvements. I want more consistency in play. I want everyone to step up and I want to start, like I said, building that foundation to the team that we need. It's not going to be instant, and I know a lot of people are so sold on Patrick Laine coming to the Ducks and getting him, but one player is not going to make a difference. He's not. I mean, look at McDavid and Draisaitl. You have two of the top 5 players in the world on one team, and they still can't get it together. So I just don't want the Ducks to be in that situation. Let's start from the beginning and go up from there. It's not going to be pretty at times, and they're going to make mistakes, but you learn from your mistakes, and as long as you don't keep making those mistakes over and over again at the power play, then maybe we can build from there. Shattenkirk, it should spark something in the power play. We should have more offensive numbers and kind of improve on that aspect. But the whole thing I want for the Ducks, I want them to go and win the Stanley Cup. I'll go crazy. I'll go nuts. I'll probably be OV drunk for the next few months. Who knows? I didn't even make that rhyme, but it sounded pretty good. But I'm just living in a realistic world. It's the chances of that happening is really slim. We don't have that many guys that were going to throw the body around. If you run in a team like Dallas where they would just hit first, ask questions later, and then shoot the puck, and then for some reason they score, and that's totally different. But I'm content with the Ducks just improving. That's all I want them to do, improve. I want everything on the board improve. Obviously, the power play, which is atrocious, that needs some work. We brought in Shattenkirk. He seems to love to shoot the puck, and he likes to create opportunities and open up the game a little bit more. So we should see a little bit more scoring on the power play. I want to see our young guns that I mentioned before. I want them all to rise up to their potential and start scoring more. Troy Terry, he's an amazing player. He can move around. He can get past people. It just sometimes seems like he holds on to the puck a little too long. You know what? Just fire that puck on net. At this point, who knows what's going to happen? It might go in. It might deflect off the goalie. You have a rebound opportunity for someone else there. Just shoot the damn puck a little bit more. And I'm not one of those fans who are sitting there and banging a glass. Shoot the puck during warm-up or anything like that. Just saying, where the Ducks were like toward the bottom of the league in shots on goal, they have to do something different, and they have to improve. And I think the next season, and it's probably going to be a shortened season too. Let's take that and use that to our advantage, and let's kind of speed up this rebuilding process and get everyone that experience so we can actually compete for a Stanley Cup.
Well, another part of that competing too is the Ducks. They have to figure out what their backup goalie situation is going to be. And there was a little bit of update on that, and we had some fan questions too. We had Spencer CD and the Real Jack ESKO on Instagram ask about backup options. Do we sign someone else? Do we grab one? From the inside. Basically, we just go from what we got. So the update lately was at the Hockey Hot Stove. Miller's agent has been talking to Bob Murray. Miller's also been coming in and practicing with the guys. Murray unveiled that as well, but he said that he's keeping it open. He's kind of been patient with Miller and what he wants to do. Then the Athletics' Pierre LeBrun, he puts out an article saying that Miller could be exploring options with Detroit, Las Vegas, and Washington. So then there's that comes out. It sounds like it's the opposite of what Murray's saying. So now it's like, well, what the fuck is going on, right? Because you're kind of like, okay, we have this side from Hayward and Murray and the Hot Stove, and now we have this article. So it sounds like Miller wants to play, and that's what he said. That was the quote that he told Pierre LeBrun in a text, that he's still ready to come back and give it a go at least one more year. So he's coming back. It sounds like pretty sure, but the question is where. I don't really see Detroit and Washington too much. I mean, he said before that he wants to stay in California, or at least close to California. I don't know if San Jose, LA, I don't know if those would be options. I mean, maybe Vegas. Lanier's got that shoulder surgery now, kind of putting them in a little bit of a bind. Who knows if he'll be ready to go come the beginning of the season. So there's that option there as well. But this one, I would like Miller to come back, Eddie, but I wouldn't be upset if he didn't. If he didn't, then maybe the Ducks go with Stolarz, and just keep it that way because, like we said, the cap situation is kind of crazy right now. So I think the Ducks do have options. And I think that's why Murray is staying patient, though a lot of the goalies have, gotten picked up in this last week or so.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting for Miller. I thought, and my understanding was the Ducks were being patient and are waiting to him making his decision. Now we have two conflicting stories, so we have no idea what's going on. I think it's ideal for Miller to come back, play for the Ducks. He did well in that backup role. But then again, I wouldn't be upset. I mean, we would a little bit emotionally be upset because I like Miller. He was my favorite. Like one of my favorite goalies when he was in Buffalo, and he played for Team USA. So I have a picture of a painted picture of him. So yeah, emotionally that would kind of like irritate me a little bit, but business wise, it wouldn't really matter. I think Stolarz is more than capable of handling a backup role. Hopefully he is. Who knows? Knock on wood. I don't want to say this. Everyone gets mad at me after. But it just with Washington and Detroit, it doesn't make sense. Washington have Samsonov, that's their projected number one goalie, and then they just signed Hendrik Lundqvist. He's their, I guess their 1B option. They're pretty much stacked, so Miller would be the third goalie in that tandem. And then come to Detroit, they have Thomas Greiss had just signed, and they have Bernier, who hasn't been playing that bad for Detroit. So it's going to be kind of the situations where does he fit in either of those teams? He mentioned before he wants to stay close to the Hollywood area, Los Angeles area, because of his wife's an actress, and his family, which is understandable. It's family first. I just can't see those two teams being there. Vegas, maybe it's not that far away from Los Angeles. It's about, if you drive like me and my friends and I, we get there like 3.5 hours. But having Leonard and Marc-Andre Fleury, it's just once they come back healthy, he's that third goalie, and I think he's better than that just to be a third or AHL goalie. I don't think he would want that. It just seems like either he's going to sign with the Ducks or he's not going to sign at all, or maybe with the Kings. Kings have Cal Peterson as a backup, but having Ryan Miller would be a definitely upgrade for him. Cal Peterson has been one of those goalies that's kind of inconsistent. Having that, or who knows, maybe San Diego or Ontario Reign. I don't want to say that to a caliber goalie like Miller. I think he deserves better than that. It's just one of those situations. It's really weird, and you don't know what's going on. You have one side saying this, one side saying that, and obviously there's someone that's telling the truth, someone that's telling the not truth. But regardless, if Miller does not come back to the Ducks, yeah, like I said, emotionally it's going to be sad. But we do have Stolars, and with Stolars too, he has decent numbers. And if he comes back and tears up the backup role, you know what? Then Gibson's traded. He's done. I'm just kidding, guys. I know some people got all upset right now, ready to go off, like, oh, screw this. No, definitely, no. Gibson's the goalie of the future, and there's no way Stolars will ever reach that level. But let's say he comes in the backup role, he plays really well, he gains some, I guess, some traction going on, and he gets some value. Well, come trade deadline, we can go and trade him to a contender. If there's an injury or someone's looking for a capable backup, then boom, we bought low and we just sold high. We could bring up someone to back up Gibson and expose him to the expansion draft, which most likely there's going to be a lot of goalies being exposed, and we're not going to lose one. It's kind of a win-win for the Ducks, either if they sign him or not. Or I'm sorry, if they sign Miller or not, it's going to be a win-win for the Ducks regardless.
And Murray kind of alluded to that too in the Hockey Hot Stove. He said, "Hey, with the expansion draft, it's not really going to matter in the backup situation as far as protecting the goalie." So, as you said, that's true. That's why I think he's keeping an open mind. Going back to their fan question too, if you're looking at the free agents for the goalies on Cap Friendly, the only viable option really that would be comparable to Ryan Miller would be Aaron Dell. Aaron Dell cost $1.6 million last year. Had similar numbers, same save percentage as Miller, 907, and then his goals against was 3.01. The only other ones left around there, which are going to cost probably too much, are Mike Condon, Jimmy Howard, Craig Anderson, and Corey Snyder, who's supposed to sign pretty soon here. Anyways, so there's not really that many options. I mean, there were goalie options before when the free agency started, but a lot of them got picked up and found homes already. So I really think the overall answer here is they're either going to sign Ryan Miller or not, and they're going to go with Stolars. So I think that's what you got to look for in the goalie situation. And one other kind of key thing, speaking about uncertainty next season, that Bob Murray talked about is, what's going to happen. Eddie kind of alluded to it as far as the games, and this kind of affects, too, how we think the Ducks will do as well. It's interesting. Murray talked about having maybe, this bubble thing with the hub cities again. He also talked about the Canadian-U.S. border and the issues with COVID with that. And he said there's a lot of ideas being thrown around, even possibly having different teams in different divisions because of this whole thing. So who knows what's going to happen next season? They said it was going to start originally in December. Now they're saying it's going to be New Year's Day. There's so much stuff going up in the air, but all this also is going to affect how the Ducks are going to do. I think, like Eddie said, if some of the divisions get rearranged and the Ducks don't have to compete with these certain teams like Vancouver, Edmonton, and Calgary, if they say they do get moved for some weird reason. Again, this is all just hypothetical. This is just what Murray started talking about in the Hockey Hot Stove, which I thought was interesting. I was just like, whoa, we're getting pretty crazy here with this next season. I figured it would be a shortened season for sure, but he was talking about all this other stuff, again, which is in the article if you didn't read it. So I think that's going to play into it too, Eddie, with how next season goes. I just want hockey to come back. Obviously the playoffs, was exciting. Like we said, there was a lot of hockey for a couple weeks, and they're able to get it done, which was fantastic. But I'm really ready to get the season back and going, and it's just going to have to wait and see at this point what's going to happen. I don't know if you have any thoughts that you wanted to add, Eddie, as now we're going into the official off season for the next couple months. Off season in October, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I effing miss hockey, and I'm gonna blurp that out because you used the only F word we can use in the show. But I really miss going to games. I'm seeing my memories at being at games. I miss seeing everybody. I know Jen Franklin's one. That's when we see her, it's always like just like everything's smiling. She has Kesper, and it's always a really fun interaction with her and everyone else. I just walk around and I meet random people like, oh, you're Argonzo, and oh, you're so and so. We have that connection and that kind of friendship, and it feels like home to me. It feels great to be there. Just that environment, walking in, just seeing everything. I really miss going to games. It's like a drug for me. I'm withdrawing off not going to games. And with the situation that we're in right now, we don't know when fans are gonna go to games. I love going to games as well as a lot of other fans do. So that's the only one thing I'm gonna add to it. Just I'm looking forward to getting the season rolling. I'm looking forward to seeing the Ducks on the ice. It's been a while since we've seen them. The only thing we get is like when we watch Instagram stories and they're just playing some ball hockey or working out. That's the only interaction with the Ducks that we have. But I really can't wait till this situation gets figured out and the season starts rolling. And at minimum, we can just go ahead and watch some games.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Just get back to the regular season and watch them play, hopefully in some kind of fashion, whether there's fans or not, which is a whole nother issue. But looking at what happened to the free agency too, and this factors in with the Ducks win now, win later philosophy. The Pacific Division was pretty busy this last week, and whether or not these Canadian teams get moved out or however this is going to work. It's going to be tough, I think, for the Ducks. This is where I kind of lean towards them not making the playoffs, Eddie. And I know you got these transactions to talk about that happened, especially the big one that just came out with Colangelo going to Vegas. So that's going to make them even stronger. But I think the Pacific's going to be, just more tough. I don't know. It's going to be a rough road, I think, for Anaheim next season.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. Before I get to that, though, I want to throw out this, Mike. I know it's kind of an up and down kind of relationship with the Ducks. We don't know what's going to go on. We don't know what's going to happen, playoffs or not. I do want to mention some really great news. EA Sports released their top 50 rankings, and John Gibson was 90th overall, was number 23 out of 50. He's the second best goalie in the game, only behind Andrei Vasilevsky, which is ranked number 11. Which is it's kind of a bragging moment for the Ducks. And just thinking about it too, NHL 21 is coming out with their new game. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to buy 2 codes, one for the PS4, one for the Xbox 360, and we're going to give them away on social media, courtesy of DucksNPucks. So I think the game is supposed to be released this week. So I'll go ahead and get those codes this weekend, and I will do a little graphic. And I'll, just go retweet, share, or tag your friends, and we'll give them away. 1 code for the PS4 and 1 code for the Xbox 360.
There you go. That's something to look forward to in the off season for sure.
There we go.
You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm with you as far as Gibson being ranked up high, and I think, like we said, the defense is going to help out. But I don't know, man. Some of these moves that the Pacific's doing. Regardless how the season's going to be, I think it's going to be very competitive in the Pacific Division, whatever it is next season.
Oh yeah, Canucks. They signed Holtby to a 2-year deal. He's still a really capable number 1 goalie. He's won a Stanley Cup, and he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Unless you give up a 6-goal lead on him, and then the Ducks can come back and win that. I still remember that game from years ago. I can tell you exactly where I was at that Shogun restaurant when that happened, so that was kind of cool. The Oilers did take a gamble on Kyle Turris. He was in Nashville. he didn't really pan out there, but I still can see him having some success and having some hockey left in him. So look for him. They also re-signed Mike Smith when they lost out on the Markstrom deal. And Tyson Berry, surprisingly, signed a low 1-year prove-it deal to them. For the amount that he cost, I was looking for, or he could have signed with the Ducks, but we got Shattenkirk, and I think Shattenkirk's going to work out for us a lot better. The Flames did sign Chris Tanev, a former Canucks player. If I'm saying his name wrong, I don't care because it's not the Ducks and it's Pacific Division, and the Flames are kind of lame. So they did sign him to a 4-year deal, but they did sign Jacob Markstrom. He's going to be the question mark. He had a great season with the Canucks. So we're going to see how he pans out, what he does. They had Demko that played really well in the playoffs and was, I guess, solidified that number 1 spot. So we're going to see what goes on there. The Golden Knights were the team of the Pacific that everyone's talking about. They signed Colangelo to a 7-year, $61.6 million deal. They just got extremely dangerous and probably shot up to be that number 1 team to win the Stanley Cup next season. They are not playing around. They did trade Nate Smith to the Canucks as well, just to shed some cap space. And they did get rid of Paul Stastny for that reason, which they're their best face-off person. So I think the only bad thing about their team and the biggest not strength but weakness in their team is face-offs, because they don't really have a person that's really that good at face-offs. But holy crap, Mike, the Golden Knights just got scary. Barry to the Oilers, it was kind of shocking, but it makes sense. He's going to be playing with Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. Those 2 players can put up points and kind of make you seem better than you are. So maybe his next payday is going to kind of bank off getting points off them. I think the best thing to talk about right now is the Golden Knights signing him. They just, I don't know where they're getting this money, if they're just gambling and winning more money and being able to raise that cap. But it's just, I think that was the most notable transaction of the Pacific Division. I mean, yeah, you have the Kings. The Kings didn't really, they signed Elias Anderson from the Rangers. He was the player, the Swedish player that threw his silver medal in the crowd. He's infamous for that. He also, during opening night, he tripped over the wire. And you have the Sharks bringing back Nieto and Marlowe, but I think the biggest question is the Golden Knights. It's either a winner or bust. You went all in, so they're pretty much living up to their Vegas name and gambling.
Yeah, the Knights are going to be scary. You know, they made some moves for sure, and I think that's definitely a team to watch. Your Avalanche made some moves as well. They're another team to look for in the Western Conference as well. Those guys are going for it, and I mean they both went deep in the playoffs, so I expect them to both be up there next season for sure. And then there were a couple other deals in there. This kind of goes in the whole win it now mentality too, I guess, Eddie, we could talk about. But you had Hall doing the 1-year deal in Buffalo for $8 million, but I mean I don't think Buffalo's going to win it all, but I'll let you weigh on that in a second because I know you got a theory on that. Bobby Ryan did a 1-year deal in Detroit. That was kind of weird, but then he does live close by there. So you had a couple of these things where guys are doing these deals, and you were like, okay, well they're talking about wanting to be on a team that's going to win it, and then they did this. So I really don't know, but I'll let you chime in a second. You had Mikko Koivu did a year with Columbus. Torrey Krug went with the Blues with a 7-year deal at $6.5 million. So that was one of the bigger signings, and you already mentioned Lundqvist earlier in the show as well. So those are some of the other moves out there. I know there's some other trades that we kind of mentioned too. I'll let you talk about those as well. But overall, it seems like to me that at least in the Western Conference, that Colorado and Vegas are the teams that loaded up. Like you said, the Sharks did get Dubnyk and Donato in different transactions for some picks. The Kings got Olimata from Chicago for a prospect as well. But let's face it, the Kings and the Sharks are going to suck next year. I'm just saying that. They probably they'll turn around and do great, but I think they'll be terrible. I think the Ducks can still be better than them. But what are your thoughts? I know there's some other trades, or if you want to talk about some of these, 1-year deals that were kind of signed, kind of interesting, movement. It was actually a lot of stuff did happen this last week. They did talk about, because of everything going on in the world and the uncertainty and the cap not moving, that some moves were not made as much as before. But I still thought this last week was pretty interesting with some of these trades and pickups.
Oh, yeah. And first of all, I just want to throw out Bobby Ryan. It's going to suck to kind of cheer for Detroit, but I wish him all the best of luck. I hope he has a great season. I hope he just bounces back from that adversity and he can come next season and sign a bigger deal somewhere else. He's a great guy. I think 99.9% of Ducks fans love him, and they still support him, which is good. So I wish him all the best. With the Wild, I don't know what the hell they're doing over there. I don't know what the hell they're smoking. But, I'm glad they're doing it. I hate the Wild more than any team in the NHL. But letting Mikko Koivu walk, he wasn't a problem with your team. He was your longtime captain. That's going to be bad. Now, Hall is the... Oh, okay, before I get the Hall, hold on. Torrey Krug signed with the Blues, 7-year deal, which was kind of funny because Robert Thomas from the Blues posted a picture and hit the clip of Torrey Krug hitting him in the Stanley Cup final when the Blues won.
Yes!
And he said, hey, did we just become best friends? And Torrey Krug posted the Step Brothers clip saying, yeah, I think this is the reason why I love hockey, because these players can do that. It's just... Everyone's talking about, oh, wait, they signed Krug. Krug hit Thomas, and fans are making a big deal. Media's making a big deal, trying to, build up a story. And no, these players shut it down and joked about it. It was just the greatest thing in the world. It made me laugh, and I posted that on my personal social media. This is why I love the game. These players are so
classic.
Awesome. Yeah, now, here's the weird thing. Hall signs in Buffalo. He wants to win. He wants to sign with the contender. He signs an 1-year, $8 million deal with Buffalo. At first, everyone's flipping out what's going on, but then I stopped and thought about it. I read that the Avalanche offered him around $6 million to sign for 1 year. He's signing with Buffalo 1 year, $8 million. Obviously, Buffalo is not going to make the playoffs. They're going to be sours at the trade deadline like they always are. So what does that mean for Hall? Hall's going to be traded to a contending team and still get that $8 million cap hit. Obviously, that team acquiring him is going to have a much lower cap hit, but he still gets the dollar amount that he wants, but it doesn't have to, if that makes sense. He doesn't have to, sign with the team. It's taking a chance, and I don't know. It's kind of weird. But I think it's a smart move for Hall. I think he's a little bit overrated, and I follow the Avs closely, too. I run the Denver Avs page. I didn't want Hall to the Avs, and I made that clear when I posted on the Denver Avs social media that I don't think that he's going to be that player that can push the Avs to win the Stanley Cup. I just there's too many Chiefs, not enough Indians. If you guys heard that quote, so moving forward, back to Ryan too. I think it's no pressure for him in Detroit. Obviously, Detroit's not projected to make a Stanley Cup appearance. They're projected to be in that bottom roll team. He had a good conversation, a 45-minute Zoom conversation with Yzerman, and apparently they both were on the same page. So it's good for him. Like I said again, I wish him all the best, and unfortunately I have to cheer for Detroit a little bit, so that's going to be weird. Colorado made some acquisitions that significantly boosted their team. They acquired for Brandon Saad, and they got Devin Taves, not relation to Jonathan Taves, from the Islanders. Lou Lamoriello, I'm butchering his name, but I don't care. He's not the Ducks GM. He didn't want to trade him, but unfortunately, this player had a significant stride in the playoffs. He's been well for the last 2 seasons for the Islanders, and he's due a significant raise. So he's in a file. He filed for arbitration, and the Islanders probably weren't going to be able to solidify him and sign him for the contract they wanted, so they had to let him go. Another big trade that happened was the Senators acquired Matt Murray. He did sign an extension with them. And the Blue Jackets, again, they traded for Max Domi. I kind of a little bit wanted Max Domi to come to the Ducks. I think he would fit that style. He has that gritty, that physicality that I think that fits that dirty Duck style. Obviously, I knew it wasn't going to happen, but, I'm good for him. You guys don't know Max Domi's story. He's the guy, he has to wear that machine because he has diabetes, but he's one of those players where kids can look up to if they have diabetes and they're playing hockey. They have that kind of, I don't know if it's kind of considered a disability, but something holding him back. He's one of those outliers that proves that no matter what you have, that you can just rise forward and go and have success. And I wish him success and with the Blue Jackets, as well as rewinding and saying Mikko Koivu too, because I think Mikko Koivu deserves that respect, even though he played for a team that I absolutely hate.
Yeah, I know. You talk about the Wild and it cracks me up. So, yeah, I mean, some interesting moves like we talked about. I think that Taylor Hall take that you have is pretty interesting. I think to watch that and see what will happen there as well. And we'll see what happens. I mean, we're going to keep trying to do these shows more often as there's more and more news. So as more stuff comes out about the league as well, we'll cover it. And for really our last segment, we got a lot of fan questions to cover. I think some of them we did already, but we'll go through some of these and wrap up the show. We always appreciate that you guys listen and you submit the fan questions on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and whatnot. And you can also go to patreon.com/DucksNPucks and become a member and get some free gear as well if you want more stuff. So please do that as well. So I'll go through some of these questions. We got a bunch. I'll try to get through as many as we can as we're running out of time here. But we had one here about Manson. I thought this was interesting. Eddie, we had Ducks fan and John Louie that are on Instagram talking about Manson being moved. That his contract's favorable and that some people would like to pick him up, that he may be trade bait. So I thought that was an interesting one. For me, it's a no. I would not trade Manson. However, I forgot, I did see a report this week about someone saying that they were kind of dangling him out there to see what kind of offers. So I'm not opposed to that. I mean, if they can throw out an offer and someone will overpay and give a lot for him, then I'm all for it. But otherwise, I would say no, and I would keep him with the team.
I agree with you. He's a top 4 defender, a right shot defender, and we only have 2 of those. Losing him, we just become that much weaker on our blue end, and we don't have a solidified top 4 defenseman. And if you want to keep trending up and be a better team and try to be a contender soon, losing one of our top 4 right-handed defensemen isn't the way to go.
We have another one. We kind of talked about this too. This is GSOTS on Instagram talking about, and we hit on this throughout the show, should the Ducks try to sign more players? They mentioned that the Ducks do not have enough cap space. They're listed on Cap Friendly as using close to $1 million on the LTIR. And there's a log jam of players, which we talked about, especially at the forward, a lot of these fringe players and whatnot, and also the expansion draft. So a lot going on there. We did cover some of this earlier in the show, but yeah, the issue with the cap space right now is that you still have that option to switch over to Kessler's LTIR, which Eddie mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, but you're kind of limited because you can't go over 10% of the cap space in the summertime. So there's kind of that rub in there. That's why kind of Murray did what he did, so that way he still has the option of using Kessler's room. Come closer to the season if he wants, or if he wants to use some of it now. As right now he's at $1 million, so he's kind of right there. But looking at the players and stuff, it's tough. I would like more offense. Eddie and I kind of talked about this before the show. And looking at the free agents that are available on Cap Friendly, there's only 3 20-goal scorers out there left. You have Mike Hoffman, Dandanoff, and Duclair. So those are the guys that are out there. Hoffman and Dandanoff, you're looking at $5.5 million, $3.5 million. It's too much, right? That's going to put the Ducks in a bind. But the one that Eddie and I agree on, that if the Ducks did want to get somebody, is Duclair. He's $1.6 million last year. Probably do a little bit of a raise, but that would be the best option. I don't know that the Ducks would do it because of all these young guys in the pipeline that Murray's hoping that would go off. But Duclair's one. I mean, if they want to go out there and get him, and that's an option. I don't think they do it, Eddie, but I know you and I talked about it. If they wanted to go pick out one guy to add some offense, I mean, this guy's pretty tenacious. Every time he played the Ducks, he played hard. So I don't know if they'll do anything else to pick up another NHL forward, but of the ones that are left, that's my guy.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't think that we can have him right now. There's just too many forwards. If we do try to go and pick him up, we're gonna have to make a trade and trade someone. So that's the hard thing about it. But I think he's the most sensible one to pick up for the right cost. I guess one of those buy low thing, kind of high reward kind of thing. He's had a long run. He's had unsuccess in a lot of teams. He finally found success with the Senators, and he's been playing some great hockey. He plays a 200-foot game, and he's pretty quick. I wouldn't be mad if they picked up him, but then again, you have to lose someone, and then if we pick him up for 1 or 2 years, then what? And after that, he's just going to leave, and we just got him for nothing, and maybe we got him. He scores a few game-winning goals, and we move up, and we get that lower or actually not lower, I should say lower draft pick. I don't know. I wouldn't be mad if they got him. He's one of the players I would want the Ducks to try to go, but at this point, I'm content with what they have right now.
Yeah, and I think that's, we had more of those fan questions like that we kind of answered that were similar. Tyler J6710 asked that too. What moves can we bring in, for scoring? That was the one we mentioned. We also talked about the backup goalie. The Ducks have to figure that out. Like we said, if they want to push above, they can stay within that 10%, like we said, in the offseason. But then you got to be careful because you don't want to get too far up there, and then the Ducks are stuck because I'm assuming this season's going to be like last season. There's going to be a lot of cap shuffling going on, right? There's going to be a lot of bus rides up and down Anaheim and San Diego if the AHL gets off the ground the way it's supposed to, right? So a lot of influx. So I think Murray's kind of leaving that buffer of Kessler's LTIR because, if the season was to start today, he would be dipping into $1 million of that already. So I that's why I think not much more is going to happen, though I've seen some reports out there saying that, the Ducks might make another move or two here or there. That's true, they might, but they're probably going to be smaller moves, nothing big. So I wouldn't get too excited about anything else happening down the road here as far as like significant in terms of this team. And it kind of leads to Paul James 1987. His question on Instagram is, what do we expect for the Ducks next season? We've talked about it in the show before, but going with what we have now, I think the pressure is really on a lot of these young forwards, unfortunately, and Murray talked about that in the Hockey Hot Stove, and he didn't want to mention names. He only mentioned Max Jones, saying that he's improved, and he said, I'm really expecting a lot of these guys to step up, score more, and go off next season. And I think that's one of the biggest factors with this team. The other part is special teams, as Eddie mentioned and I mentioned, which is, it seems like that was addressed a lot in the free agency and the draft. Murray kind of focused on that. He kind of focused on rebuilding the defense. So I think those parts will be okay with this team. But as far as next season, I really think the offense is the key, Eddie. I think if some of these younger guys can step up and we're not just relying on Henrique and Raquel and Silverberg, this team could be deadly. But, again, I just don't see this team being, a contending team.
No, and with the exception of Getzlaf, Silverberg, Henrique, you really, and I guess Raquel, you can't ask any of those players to step up. It's just the Ducks have a lot of young guns and they drafted well, and these young guns need to stop. I guess playing the role of superstar and try to kind of go for that. You haven't really earned shit in the NHL. Like you've been playing 1-2 seasons and you think you're badass. Hell no. You need to get up and put those points up there. You need to perform for us. You need to perform for your team. Herb Brooks said it. That jersey, that logo on the front's more important than the name on the back. You need to start playing like it. I'm tired of seeing half-ass playing from rookies, especially. Yeah, I get it from players like Getzlaf. I don't like seeing that. Which, scratch that. Getzlaf really never does that. He plays the game to the best of his ability. It just, I don't know. I'm sounding off on these rookies now because it just seems, especially when Getzlaf was talking on that one show, I think Spit and Chicklets, how these rookies feel a lot more comfortable, and I guess more comfortable than when he came into the league. It doesn't work that way. No, you have to get up and earn the spot. All because you make the opening night roster doesn't make you shit. You need to go and start performing. If not, you know what, I think it's time to go. I'm tired of wasting time and just having these players underperform. No, we have to step up. We have to start building that foundation. We have to start getting to that point where we're going to be competitive and we're going to try to win the Stanley Cup, not just be content with being in NHL and trying to flex your muscles like, hey, I'm an NHL hockey player. That's good enough. Hell no, it shouldn't be good enough. You should be trying to get that next mark. You should be aiming for 20 goals, and when you get 20 goals, you should be trying to aim for 30. And when you get 30, you should hit it for 40, and just up and up and up. You should be the best player you can possibly be, and not just be content because of being up with the Ducks. It's just getting really frustrating seeing these players do that, and especially hearing Getzlaf talk about how these players had kind of felt a little more comfortable than they should be. Sorry, I'm sounding off a little bit. I'm tired of people thinking they earn a spot when they're still rookies and they don't really have that spot to earn.
Well, and that's come up a couple times too. Murray's talked about that. Like you said, Getzlaf's talked about that as well. And Murray also talked about being a little bit more involved with Dallas Eakins and the locker room and whatnot too. So I think the pressure's really on for a lot of these young guys. They're going to have to put up or shut up next season. I mean, some of them have been up there and they've done okay. Like you said, they're not playing poorly, but I mean, some of these guys, I honestly, like, for me, Max Jones, he really hasn't done as much as I expected offensively. He just hasn't, unfortunately. And I'm not trying to call him out. I'm just saying he was hyped up so much, and I mean, he's playing good, but I think he can do better. That's just my take on him, and I think some of the other guys can chip in too. I'd like to see Comtois come back up. He did amazing. If he can stay up there for a long time, I think Terry and Steele are kind of on the border, ready to break out too, hopefully. And that's where they're at. A lot of guys, I think, are on this edge. And then Murray brought up picked up these younger guys too that have done really well in the minors that could jump up there and maybe compete for bottom six role. So, I mean, I look at it kind of like you do, old school, like, hey, you guys got to do X, Y, and Z. But then I'm also excited, too, because he did bring in a bunch of younger guys as well. And I think there's a potential for some of these guys to do well next season. So, I'm looking at it a little bit more optimistic. But definitely the hammer is going to be, I think, down for the Ducks come next season. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. So we're going to have to see how they do. I'm hoping that some of these young guys do go off like Murray's hoping. Some of the other questions, we had another one about, from Hunt J. Justin 24 on Instagram, talks about Perreault and Drysdale. Will they be in Ducks uniforms this season? Again, talking about the younger players coming up. I don't think so. Murray did hint at Zegras coming up and playing. That was one of the ones specifically that he talked about. He was really excited about his hard work and his ethic, as Eddie was drilling home on his last comments there, that he's really happy with the way that he's listening to what they're telling him to do, and he's coming and putting in the work and the ethics. So I think Zegras is the one you're more likely to see. I think Perreault and Drysdale probably not. Maybe a game or two here or there, but as far as being up there for a while, I don't really think so, Eddie.
No, same here. And they shouldn't. We shouldn't rush them. You guys seen what Edmonton's done. That's not the right way. I go on Neil Yakupov. I think he could have been a dynamic player, and he could have been a force to be reckoned with. I think Edmonton kind of screwed him and effed him out of that chance. And now he's back in the K, and he just was wasted first overall opportunity. And I think, part of it's going to fall on the player, but then another part of it's going to fall on the team that should recognize a player and not force him when he's not ready. He was forced. He shouldn't have been. He shouldn't have played when he should have. In NHL, it's a whole different ball game. It's a lot physical. It's a lot tougher. He was a little smaller player. And that's one thing I can always proudly and say about the Ducks. They don't force their players, and they don't waste their opportunity. Yeah, they made some questionable moves, and we've seen players go off on a tangent and be, superstars now. When you talk about Theodore and Carlson, but other than that, Ducks don't really throw players in that aren't ready, and that's one good thing I can say about the Ducks. And I can't see any of those players, and I don't want them to see them in Ducks uniforms next season, minus the preseason. If we even get a preseason, who knows what's going to happen next season?
Yeah, everything's in flux. It's just too crazy. I got a couple more questions. These are kind of ones that we talked about before. if you didn't listen to the last show, but we'll address them here as well. We had Graham Smith on Facebook asked, what's the status of Kessler and Eves as far as their contracts and whatnot. So Eves is basically retired. Unfortunately, with his condition and things that were going on, there was different reports out there that it was one thing and then another, and then it was what it was. But unfortunately, he's not going to be able to play anymore, so he's off the books. The Ducks don't have to worry about him anymore. With Kessler, as we talked about, they're most likely going to put him on the long-term injury reserve. His salary this year is $6.8 million, and then he's also on the books next season for $6.8 million. So that's where we're at with those guys. And then we also had Marcus, who asked us about Getzlaf and whether or not he's going to be with the Ducks next season. Absolutely. We talked about it. He was selling his house in Kodo. I'm not sure if he sold it yet or not, but he also moved back towards the beach. So as far as next season goes, we're pretty sure he'll be with the team. After that, we don't know. So there's not a lot of changes there, Eddie, with those guys. Not really much to say. But the last question I want to go with is funny because Eddie and I disagree on this, and this is a funny one. But Michael Mobley asks, do you put pineapple on your pizza? Yes or no? I'll let Eddie go first, and then we'll finish with this one.
Abso-freaking-lutely. I think pineapple on the pizza tastes great. It enhances the flavor. It's just awesome. I love it. And I guess if you don't put pineapple on your pizza, then I don't know. Maybe you're Mike Walters. Who knows? But you know what? Pizza is pizza. I don't care how you eat it. Well, actually, never mind. I do care how you eat it. Maybe I'm not the best person to talk about this because I actually like barbecue pizza on my pizza. Like barbecue chicken pizza is probably better than regular pizza for me. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask about this, but I guarantee 100% I love pineapple on my pizza. I love pineapples in general. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I open up a can of pineapples and rub it on my ears and my body, and I feel good. I'm so kidding. That's from a movie, but I just had to throw a joke out there to see everyone laughing. If you guys seen Wedding Crashers, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But good question, though. I think this is like one of the most enjoyable questions we had in a while.
Yeah, one of the most off the wall ones, and I think Michael, because I know he follows us religiously. He's always commenting on usually Facebook, sometimes on Twitter. But I'll meet you halfway. So for me, pineapple is a no-go on pizza, okay? I like pineapple, don't get me wrong. I love pineapple, but I don't want it on my pizza. Now, barbecue chicken on pizza, I give that a hell yeah. I will take that anytime, anywhere. So, we're not always, we agree on a lot of things, but this is the one that I'm like, I don't know, bro. So maybe we'll get a pizza and we'll get half pineapple, pepperoni, and half with the barbecue chicken. That way we can kind of just go that route. I don't know. What do you think, Eddie?
Oh, that's perfect. You know what, fans, if you have more questions about food too, I always tell you about movies, but if you have weird questions about, I guess, idiosyncrasies about food, shoot them our way because we would love to talk about that because I'm weird with food. I love certain things. I don't like certain things. I'm really particular about food, and I'm really picky too, so that's kind of weird. So if you have any questions about food, shoot them our way. We'll be happy to talk about them. Thank you, Michael, for this conversation or this question because it made us laugh and it was a great question.
Yeah, I figured we'd end the show on that on a funny note. And yeah, absolutely. Like I know I asked for questions about hockey and Ducks and stuff, but if you have anything about movies or food, for sure Eddie and I will talk on it or something else random. I just thought this was a good one to end with, especially with this really busy week. So. We'll be back. Like I said, I don't know when exactly, but we try to get on a more regular schedule, maybe every couple weeks or so, whenever we figure out the season's coming back. Don't forget, we still have T-shirts and hats and stuff. You can go to tpnhockey.com, check it out, and just thanks for listening. Thanks for following. Stay strong, stay safe, be kind, love one another, and as always, let's go Ducks.